AI happens pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, it might just pass you by.
Hello, and welcome to The Reasoning Show. I'm your host, Brian Gracely, and today I've got reason to be a little frustrated, a little confused, a little, I guess you would say, sort of a bee in my bonnet, and I need to talk it through with someone. I need to figure out, should I be concerned about the idea that coding is a solved problem, or is it, more just semantics than anything, and we're just, we're not worried about people being able to type commands. But I want to sort of think about the future of software development in the AI era, but also, what the ramifications are for businesses as they may or may not continue to invest in software developers, software architecture, software engineers. And we're going to dig into that after the break. Today's show is sponsored by ShareGate. You're out of time. Copilot needs to be deployed ASAP, but your tenant really isn't ready for it. Years of data, permissions, and users lurk in its shadows, ready to be exposed by AI. ShareGate Protect sees it all, so you can find the exposure risks, fix them fast, and deploy AI with confidence. Microsoft 365 Governance, they've got this. Learn more at sharegate.com/protect. Today's show is sponsored by Nasuni. There's a growing gap in AI right now between what's possible in theory and what successfully works at scale inside an enterprise. The difference comes down to unstructured file data. Many AI initiatives struggle because the file data they depend on is scattered, unstructured, and disconnected from where and how work actually happens. Nasuni changes that. It brings your unstructured file data into a single, secure foundation so AI, both generative and agentic, can access it with the context, governance, and performance it needs in production. Bring AI to where your unstructured data lives. See what it takes to activate your data for AI and request a demo at nasuni.com/AI. And we're back, and today's a little bit of a twofer show. It's a little bit of we're doing something a little bit quick and on a whim because we had sort of a last minute cancellation. We want to make sure we always get you guys a show out on Wednesday. It's going to be a little bit late on Wednesday, but also I saw some stuff that popped up in one of the Slack channels that we follow quite a bit, actually the Software Defines Talk Slack channel. And just sort of triggered me, but it also got me thinking kind of all day about it. So joining me today as the person who's always available to jump in, have hot takes, kind of calm me down or kind of get me thinking the right way. Brandon Witchert, welcome back to the show. Great to have you on, man. How you been?
Been fantastic. I'm ready to get you wound up. I don't know if I have half hot takes or super hot takes, but either way, they're going to be great takes.
Yeah. So I'm scrolling through one of the channels, and I see this. It looks like an ad. Maybe it's just a screenshot. It basically is from Boris Cherny, who's the head of Claude Code. So sort of becoming a well-known figure over there at Anthropic. The guy who basically said like, hey, we spent a weekend and all of a sudden Claude Code just happened. The thing built itself and you're like, okay, cool. He's kind of getting famous for, kind of being like the software and the robots are just, they're starting to run free. They're running wild. And you're like, okay, cool. But he made the statement, and I don't know how much of this is out of context, but it feels like something that would be said today by one of the AI leaders. He basically said, coding is largely solved. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4 words. And I was like, largely is doing a lot of work in that statement. And it kind of got me thinking. I understand that the biggest companies, the biggest AI companies in the world, that are now worth nearly $1 trillion or $500 billion have to say really, really big things. But I kind of was wondering, like, if somebody were saying that to you, and we're not talking about this in the context of like you're doing your own sort of home personal projects, but you're doing this in the context of like, software that's there running important things at larger businesses. Like, what would be your initial take on that, sort of coding as a solved problem?
I mean, I generally, I'm sort of like, a huge fan of Claude Code. So I don't know,
right.
Take that with a grain of salt. But like, I know where he's coming from. I totally get it. And I think the part that you're kind of getting at is more like in large existing organizations with large, processes and just a culture of the way that things have been built. The real question is like, is that culture and is that world going to adapt, right? And I think this is like the ongoing discussion that's happening because the power to sit down as one person or a very small group of people and churn out a very impressive piece of software, I think is largely solved. Like if you're willing to spend the money on the Claude Code tokens and you have a specific vision of what you're trying to build, like it can be done. It can be done very fast and it can be done, I think, extremely well. Now, other people will look at it and kind of get into it. And then you kind of get into all things, well, who's looking at all the code and how we're going to do pull requests and all that. And it's like, there's the mindset of like, listen, you can like have agents do that. You can have agents encoding all of the best practices and things like that. So I think the point he's trying to make is like, you really can build very impressive things and large things very quickly with agent-based tools. And so it's really up to you and your organization to decide, how are you going to do that? And, some people I think just in our daily conversations, like I encounter people across the spectrum. Some people probably like myself or whatever, like small projects doing it all by themselves. Right.
Yep. Other
people are very much like, it's just more code completion, right? They're still mostly writing it and they're doing pull requests and they're doing PRDs. And it's like, you can do all of that, but you're at a little bit of a disadvantage. So, that's what I'm seeing. What are you seeing?
Yeah. So this is where it kind of got me wound up a little bit and got me thinking throughout the day. So the first thing I thought of, and again, I'm always trying to put this into some sort of historical context. So like we're 3+ years into sort of the ChatGPT era, or even, generative AI era, but we're really probably only like, I don't know, a couple of years into where people feel like, you sort of documented it, Cote's documented it, like we're a year into the thing where people are like, man, I'm going to let this thing do stuff. Like I'm going to just let it go. Right. So pretty early into that. Like I was trying to think back, at what point did AWS say, IT is a solved problem? Like the public cloud is IT is a solved problem. I feel like it took them quite a while before they sort of made that statement. And in fact, for the most part, they were sort of like, well, if you've got stuff that doesn't necessarily require IT, or you want to go around IT, like we kind of are there for you. But I feel like it took them, I don't know, 5 or 6 years or something like that to get to this point. I'm trying to figure out if we're kind of at an equivalent time that cloud was basically like, no, we've solved your IT problem.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. So if we go back, I think it's 2006, AWS was sort of kicking around, right? I think it was or 2007.
Yeah, 6 or 7. Yeah.
So I think I like your timeline there. I don't know, 4 or 5 years. So 2010, 2011, before it was at a point where like pretty much you could do everything you wanted to run like an IT group in AWS. And I think it's actually a really, as you were talking there, I think it's actually a really good analogy, because like today's a good example. I don't know, however many years later, 20 plus years, it's at this point, it's not so much you can't do everything in the cloud. It's your choice, right?
Yeah, even I feel like it's not a solved problem. It's a moved problem.
I think that, but it's also like, it's really like, I almost come back to like, what have companies wanted to do? What have they accepted? Like, certainly if you were a new company and you've been founded like later than 2010, you're probably all in the cloud, right? You probably came up and did everything. But if we look back on it though, like still like, the running joke we talk about all the time is like VMware. It's like, oh, like everyone's always like, everyone's migrating from VMware. It's like, no, they're not. They're renewing their licenses. Right. But I just think that's just more a choice. Right. And I think that's something where, and I think maybe that's what you're kind of getting at, is sort of like, you can build these applications this way, but maybe people are just unwilling to do it. They prefer to do it just like people prefer to have VMware on premise for whatever reason. And that may be more just a cultural question going forward.
Yeah, because so there was part of me that was like trying to figure out like how much parallel is there to cloud in terms of timing and so forth. Because again, it took a while with cloud, and there was eventually sort of a seminal example of that was always Netflix. Okay, Netflix is cloud first. They're cloud native. They do all these things that like, because of the way it scales, because of the way you did Chaos Monkey and all this sort of stuff, like they were like the example of it. And I still don't know that I can point to the example of the company who is like, other than sort of Anthropic themselves, saying, here's something that millions of you rely on every single day that was entirely built by software and is entirely maintained by software. Like I don't know what that one is yet. And maybe people don't talk about it because they're like, I don't want to give away the secret. Maybe Adrian Cockcroft, what he did was just like, we're never going to see that again because nobody's going to let them just sort of tell what they were doing. So there was a little bit of that I was trying to figure out. And then the second thing I was trying to figure out is I was like, oh, let's assume he's 100% accurate. It's a solved problem. Mm-hmm. And even though if you talk to most developers and you would say like, hey, how much time do you spend, aside from the ones who are just like in the kind of sweat boxes for consultants. Like,
Right.
most of them, they would be like, well, I spend about 10, 15% of my time coding, maybe 20% of my time coding.
Yep.
And the rest is like meetings, status reports, troubleshooting, debugging. So you're sort of like, okay, so, of their life, how much of that have you solved? But let's take it even further. Let's suppose you just did this sort of hypothetical. Let's suppose you went to mid-sized company, and I've got a rhyme or reason for this. And you just said, look, the software people are all gone. We just fired them all because I read a headline that software is a solved problem, coding's a solved problem. How long would it take for that company? They don't have any technical people around, right? And I would sort of put you into the pretty technical category, but like all of you are gone, or all of, even me who understands some technology is gone. How long would it take them to go from like back of a bar napkin idea to having something in production that they felt like could stand up and do stuff for their business?
Well, the way I think of it right now, the skills you have to have is, I'm just calling it like terminal aware.
Yeah.
You have to be someone that is willing to like sit down, open a terminal, and be very comfortable working in it. That doesn't mean you have to like know how to write all the code. Doesn't mean you have to know every Linux command. It means you just have to have some feeling of like, I know what files are, I know what commands are, I know kind of how it's working. So if you say it's that kind of person, and maybe you just have some general knowledge of software, just sort of like, I kind of know a web server and things like that.
Right.
If you are that person, I think you can do it. Like, I think you are quote unquote a senior engineer at that point. Like, you could sit down, probably depending on how much Claude Code credit or token credit you have,
Right.
probably in a few weeks, you could build something that was pretty good, right? If you knew what you wanted to build, because that's really where the problem moves to. It's not so much, can you do it? It's like, can you articulate what it is you want it to do, right? And can you sit there and just iterate with your agent of choice, and can you build stuff? And I think once people get going with that, if they are terminal aware and they have the vision of what they're trying to get to, then you can do it. And I said this many times on Software Defined Talk, say it again here. It's like, and one of the things we're seeing in the Slack is people just starting to post their projects. Like, here's what I did, right? And I've spoken one. I built an entire iPhone app, right? It just tracks birthdays. It's out there. I just added full iPad support. I just trying to do it to learn. And I'm like, if I tried to do this on my own, months, did this in like a day, right? So I think those kinds of people can do it. Now, if you're in a completely, because I've seen this other side where I've tried to like take somebody that isn't comfortable with the terminal. They don't really know that much. They don't even want to get into it. And you try to introduce Claude Code or something, it's too much. Now, eventually maybe the co-work interface or something else will come out. But if you're not there yet, if you just don't have that level, then you're still kind of stuck. It's just like, honestly, it's just as hard to them as it is to like write all the code manually. So, so I think there is a level, like I don't almost need to redefine it. It's like, I just use terminal aware, but whatever you want to call that kind of person, I think can do it. Without that though, you're really stuck. If you're just like, especially if you get to the type of executive, like, I don't do email. I don't do anything. The person, my assistant does all of that. They're no better off now than they were like 2 years ago.
Right. Yeah. Cause the things that kind of got me thinking about this, and again, I'm trying to take this kind of to its fullest extreme, partially because it's like stuff's moving really fast. And while this would have sounded like insane, I went back and looked, like Stephen O'Grady's, software, or, was it Developers, the New Kingmakers, or the New Kingmakers book. So book is 12 years old now. And, for a good almost 10 years, 8 years, like it was sort of like the opening line of every tech conference, every presentation. You were like, software developers are really important, right? And so you look back on it now and you're like, okay, there was people got a little concerned about software developers, like somehow after COVID, because they were like, oh, we've hired too many of them. It's weird that like they're really having a hard time finding jobs these days now. I think part of that's just some weird stuff happening because it's like, oh, that big tech company just announced they laid off a whole bunch of people, and so software developers must not be important. But there's a part of me that's like, it does feel very weird that the world's becoming digital, which means that everything's sort of becoming software, and we're kind of abandoning the people that like know how to do this stuff right at the point where we're like, oh, we could give you tools to really, you could become sort of superheroes. You could sort of legitimately 10x yourself instead of the BS that, Silicon Valley did for a bunch of years because some kid won a hackathon. So I've been trying to sort of take this to this sort of extreme of like, okay, well, like, let's say this happens, because we see these business trends happen. It's like, okay, this a couple of headlines happened, this company did it, then the next company saw it. So let's suppose we're down a whole bunch of software developers a couple of years from now. It does feel like the opportunity, because you go, okay, well, maybe that's a negative thing, but what's the opportunity? It feels like, to your point of like, could somebody figure out what to do, like soup to nuts? And I think your example from a few weeks ago, you were talking on Software Defined Talk, you're like, use this web, I use this SaaS service for this and this SaaS service for this and this. And again, you figured out how to do those things. I mean, it does feel like, even though we kind of gave up on PaaS as a concept, it feels like now the opportunity for some company to be like the PaaS, or a PaaS 3.0 or 4.0 or whatever like, it feels like that opportunity is kind of the yin to the yang of coding as a solved problem. Because if now some business person has to go like, I have this great idea, it has to be as simple as like, Vercel v0 or the sort of stack that I think your stack is probably even too complicated because you knew how to put it together, but it wasn't all in one place. Like I start thinking down that path and I'm like, man, talk about like the ultimate sort of vertical stack, the ultimate sort of lock-in, the ultimate, like, I guess it would get you going, but it's like, are those things prepared for what might be coming to them? Because it doesn't feel like they're necessarily designed to be big, complicated, even like mid-sized company things, but maybe they are. I don't know.
Well, I think there's that, but also too, like, I think the way, the framing here is really important too, because I think you're kind of saying it's like, okay, well, we're going to take all these software developers and quote unquote, don't need them anymore. And we're just going to do it ourselves. But like, I kind of flip that around and be like, no, this is what's happening. You're going to take a whole bunch of people that are terminal aware, that know how software works.
Yeah.
And we're going to send them out and be like, hey, you should go build something on your own, right? What is it that you see out there? Because it's like, this is the ultimate test. It's like, you, Mr. Person that unfortunately was let go by one of the many tech companies you're doing, it's like, you have all the skills to go build anything. You know how it all works, right? And you don't need a 10-person QA team, and you don't need a product management team, and you don't need, like, you can do anything. So like, we are, if you will, flipping that around, like, we are seeding the world with a bunch of people that have the skills to go build anything that they think is useful. And kind of to your point about all these different SaaS services, right? It's like, and this is where I think sometimes we're like, well, it's like, well, AWS is letting everyone go. And not, maybe they're not. I don't want to pick on them, but big company is letting everyone go. It's like, listen, that big company should be as worried as anyone, right? Like, and I think about this all the time. Like, I use this like Neon database. I don't really know anything about it, but it's like the perfect thing. It just works, right? And it's like one tiny service that would exist inside a hyperscaler. And it's like, why don't we just go build a bunch of those that are really easy and simple to use? Or why don't we sit down, all the people that have like, like today, I'm scratching my own itch because I'm building this little iPhone app. Maybe it doesn't go anywhere, but like, if we got everyone building stuff, right? Like, I think we're going to have a much better ecosystem. And I think the big behemoth companies are in just as big trouble as it is being an employee that was let go. Like, Block is a great example. That's the company owned by Jack Dorsey, the Square, right? And they're like, oh, we just laid off 5,000 people and we only have 5,000 left. I'm like, flip that around. It's like, I think 4 or 5 people from Block could sit down with Cloud Code or their favorite agent tool and rebuild the entire thing. They're going to run that. They can run that company with like less than 100, right? At least the technical stuff. Now, the part that doesn't change is like, still got to market it, still got to get customers, still got to like, I mean, that part is still hard, but the whole part of like getting something together is fundamentally easier. And those people are going to be seated out there to do it.
Well, and that's, I think that sort of perfectly encapsulates sort of why this stuff has me sort of, in flux, because it's like, if you think about it in terms of going like, okay, what does this thing do? Well, it democratizes the ability to go like, hey, I want to turn some sort of idea or process into terms of software, which inherently would make it scale, which make it automated, all these sort of things. And it feels like there are X the number of companies who are saying, well, because that's happening or because that's possible, we're going to lay off people, as opposed to almost hearing nobody say, man, the thing to do is to marry up that CLI capable person with somebody who has business domain expertise, and we're gonna supercharge sort of both sides of it, right? As opposed to being like, well, cool, 5 people from Block could go rebuild the Block stack, but they know nothing about marketing, they know nothing about sales, they know nothing about brand. Like it just feels like this. Again, business is a lot like a lot of things. You sort of see these copycat things happen, and people go, "Oh, that's a trend. We better do that trend," even though, and it just feels to me like, and I know why the Anthropic guys are saying it, because it drives their business. They want to create a thing. It just feels like it's being so misunderstood by the marketplace, or maybe they're just using it as a fluff to get rid of bad hires. But like, you just hear so few people being like, "Yeah, we just kind of married the context of like people with some domain expertise with somebody who knows something about software. We've broken down that barrier of they being like, how would I get this idea implemented or whatever?" And I just feel like, again, I'm trying to figure out like, okay, maybe we're just not far enough into this first inning yet. Maybe we're still at the first pitch. But I mean, again, I don't hear the seminal sort of like, here's the application or service that's all software built by software, run by software. And I don't hear any company being like, laying people off, my competitor laid people off. Like, that's insane. We're going to, do the complete opposite. Like I would feel like somebody like Amazon would be like, like the Andy Jassy would be like, "Oh, you guys all thought that was the thing to do for IT? No. We're going the complete opposite. And we're going to," and it's like, no, you've all drank the Kool-Aid of like, nope, we're just going to lay off people and then people will figure it out. And it's like, I guess what I'm kind of getting at is like, it feels like they've completely abandoned any concept of like a learning curve or trying to figure it out within the business. They're just like, let's cut and burn and then figure it out. And you're like, but did you get rid of the people that could have gotten you started and gotten the curve going up and to the right?
No, I love where you're going here. And I think this is just human nature. And I think, you hit on a bunch of it, but we should just call it all out. It's like, one, it's just herd mentality, right?
Yeah.
It's like all the executives running these companies, they're just human beings. What do they see? They're just being told it's like, you can do a lot. You can do what you're doing now with a lot less. And they just look at, it's just like any CFO. They're just like, well, you know what I know I can do for sure? If I get rid of these costs, I'll be more profitable. Like that's guaranteed, right? And I think where there isn't a vision today is like, well, if we redeploy these people on like, instead of just doing 5 big projects, we do 50, right? We can go out and make, we can invade X number of new markets. And the place that you do see this is at the model makers, right? Anthropic and OpenAI, they're like, I think I just saw the other day, I think it was Anthropic hired like the CTO of Workday. He left and he's like a principal engineer or something, right? He's like, so, and it's one of these things where like, and I see where he's probably coming from is like, I can just like go there and I can, rebuild employee, management software just right there. And I think those like, they get it. I think Anthropic and OpenAI, and they're like, no, we can just do all of this. And we can build more applications, and the more applications we build, it kind of validates the idea. So I think what you're getting at is like, I think this has to work its way through the system. Like, oh, let's just save money through cost. And eventually someone's going to say, no, we should be investing, because why don't we just use the models to build the thing, right? Because like we know that they have to still go hire the expertise. We have the expertise. So if you're a big company and you have the expertise in a specific domain, you have 2 choices: reduce cost now, see immediate savings, or invest and be like, no, we can build. Think about Workday, such a good example. We could do 4 hours on my complaints about Workday, right? Like think about that application and typing in your reviews in those tiny little boxes and just how crazy that is. It's like, who doesn't want a better solution to that? Why doesn't Workday build that? In fact, the Workday person left to go build it somewhere else. If I'm Workday, I'm like, we are going to make this great. We're actually going to make this application so people actually like it. Think of the miracle that would be for all of us to have to fill out your annual review in Workday. Just one example.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about, and I'll wrap it up with this because we're this is sort of an open-ended question I've been asking the whole time. But so software developers traditionally, if you were said, hey, here's a job, unless they were just like, I got to have a job, I got needs. Here's 2 different jobs. One of them is new problem that we need to go solve. We're hiring people that have this interest or skill or whatever. And opportunity number 2 is, here's this legacy code base. I just want you to maintain and do some modernization on. 9.5 out of 10 are going to pick the first one because they don't want to deal with like, I don't know if the source code's not there. I don't know if the original developers were there. I don't know what your thinking was on this thing. I probably wouldn't have done it that way. I'm wondering if we're now going to have a situation where, like you said, like you could build something really fast in however many days or months or whatever, but you're also going to then have people be like, oh, it's up and running, I'm done, I'm getting out of there, I'm moving on. Like, what are we going to start calling the code that's like 6 months old, was entirely AI developed and has kind of already been abandoned? Like it's not, I guess it's sort of legacy, but the assumption is like, well, it's just kind of running. I feel like there's going to be this thing of like, yeah, here, come over, take this job. We moved Brandon over to this other group because he was successful. Take over all of Brandon's projects. They're only 3 months old, but he didn't write any of them anyways. He just wrote some PRDs or he wrote some specs or whatever. Like, I feel like we're going to have that same sort of thing, except the code's not going to be, 50 years old or COBOL or whatever. It's just going to be like, would you take a previously vibe coded job, I guess is the question.
Absolutely. I would. I mean, it just kind of comes down to like, if it's profitable. It's not so much if it's vibe code, is it profitable? Like, so if people left something that was like a profitable job and it was making money, I would definitely do it. Because I've kind of done this for like resurrecting some of my own projects and seeing what it was. And like, I don't think it's that complicated. The playbook, to your point, is like, anything I encounter a new code base, I literally just start Claude in it, right? And first thing I'd be like, go through this entire thing. Tell me what it does. What does it do? Why, like, how does it work? Tell me the architecture, right? I mean, this is what I would do. Like if you and I were like working together, right? And I was like, hey, I'm onboarding you. This is the first thing I would do. Like I'd probably start like, when you bring someone on, I'd be like, okay, here's kind of the customers, here's the business problems. And then over time, right? When you take a job, you kind of go through the encapsulation. It's like, okay, this is how you do this. This is how you do this. And I think when you do that with Claude, you can do the same. It's like the same experience. Now, it may take me a couple of weeks to like get super familiar with it. Be like, oh, I know how it works. I know how the UI works. I can see where the problem is. I would set up a couple, just call it like onboarding agent. I'd be like, the first thing I would do, plan. I'd be like, I'm brand new to this. I need you to build me a plan that I need to go from knowing nothing to being an expert in this product over X amount of time. What are all the things I should do? I think Claude would give you a step-by-step checklist. Like, do this, log in this, do this demo, run this, review this. And at the end of it, I think you'd be at a place that you'd be pretty good. Now, that doesn't, just to be clear though, like if the product wasn't profitable when I came in, if we have like that problem, I don't think this is going to solve that. Yeah. But if it was running, if the company was running, it would just be like, not this would ever happen. Hypothetically, someone quit or was let go and nobody talked to him again for whatever reason. And somebody has to walk in and take it over. It would be exactly the same situation that happens all the time. And we all live through it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, like you're going to have previous jobs where it was like, well, I walked into this company, it was a 7-year-old Java application. And to a certain extent, like the thing that you're kind of dreading is what was the culture that led to, it being designed that way? Was the person in charge of it really sort of strict about doing things certain ways or other ways? Like, I'm wondering if we get to a point, again, this could be a year from now, 3 or 4 years from now, where if a bunch of people are building a lot of their stuff, let's say it's mostly with Claude or it's with Codex or, whatever the popular couple of them are, if you're just going to go like, as long as it was mostly built on Claude, I sort of know the personality and the characteristics that thing usually does. I'm fine with that. Absolutely. But maybe I don't want to go over and do the one that's with Codex because you're like, oh, that thing always wants to do things this sort of way. Or if they'll just, eventually people will look at the two of them and they'll be like, no, they're really just the same. It just mattered who you paid to get the thing done.
Well, I think that, and just one other thing, it's like, just make it even simpler. It's like, as long as they were using GitHub or some type of version control, probably GitHub. It's like, even before you take the job, maybe this is what everyone needs to do. Before you take the job, walk in and be like, hey, listen, I need access to your Git repo and I need Claude for about 3 hours. And I'm going to sit down and be like, the first thing I'd be like, go through all the Git commits. Tell me everything. Like, first, tell me what it does. Yeah. Then go through all the commits. Summarize the big ones. Tell me what they were doing. Why they make those changes. Tell me what the open problems are. What are the issues? Like, you could walk away and be like, at the end of it, you can have like a nice audit and be like, I know you have you would be so much more have so much more insights than you would when you just like take a job where you just interviewed for maybe a day with a bunch of people and then you walk in and you don't really know what's going on. Yeah. Like, if you did this and you walked in, it's almost like you talked to the engineering team at depth for like 3 hours and like, all the issues. So when you walk in, like, what's good, what's bad. And that would be, talk about a completely different way of taking a job. I love that idea.
You think about it like you read articles. I've got plenty of friends who have interviewed for jobs over the last 3. Like jobs used to go from like, hey, you're going to do 5 or 6 interviews. It's kind of personality. They're kind of going off of like, your answers. Then the last few years, it's been like, no, we're going to give you basically like a test. We're going to give you some homework. We're going to give you a problem that we can't figure out ourselves. Or, this isn't like the Google, like, hey, get on the whiteboard and code stuff. But like you saw this in all sorts of jobs. But yeah, it was always sort of like the company had the upper hand. You were having to do a bunch of work. You were kind of blind to like, what's the politics of this company? Like, what does their shit really work? Or, like what smoke and mirrors. But yeah, I mean, I think, I would think if you were interviewing for a job, actually almost any job that involves software, but like every job's going to become software eventually, you'd want to kind of go through that thing of like, show me some repository that I can look through, because I want to evaluate you as much as you guys are evaluating me. And I'm not going to do it just based on like your 10K or your public statements to the market. Like, I want to know why you do stuff the way you do. And that stuff should be somewhat encoded into how you built the software, because the software is going to be how you talk to customers, how you interact with partners, all that other sort of stuff. So,
well, I think even one other thing we should maybe let everyone do. It's like, we were talking a little offline about this, but like, I think if you're applying for a job now, take the job description that's actually there.
Yeah.
Put it through an AI tool and be like, okay, go through and be like, what questions should I ask? And more importantly, what deliverable should I ask them to review based on this job description? Because this is another thing where like, we've all read a job description. It has like all this stuff you're going to do. And then you show up at the job and it's like, it's not like that. Right. And it's like, but why not do that? Be like, okay, you said, this is about building presentations, PRDs, and going here. It's like, okay, show me all the things that the last person did. Right. What do they look like? Why are they good? Why were they bad? What are you trying to improve? And then like, I think that would reveal a lot. I think you'd find stuff to be like, there'd be questions you ask. I'm sure this would happen. There'd be stuff on the list that's in the job description no one has ever done. They'll be like, well, we've never really done that. And you'd be like, okay, you can cross it off the list. So it's like a nice two-way street, right? Instead of like you proving to them that you can do stuff, be like, okay, what are you really doing in this job? Because I know this job description was probably like maybe AI written or like, at least approved. So I think those things, to me, it's like almost like a way to get to like a deeper truth or maybe a better understanding of what's really going on. So I think that's a good task for all of us to do.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, man. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm definitely still thinking about this concept. I don't know that I'm as frustrated. I appreciate you kind of talking me off the ledge of some of this stuff. My frustration wasn't like, hey, they made a bolsterous claim. And my frustration was more just like, man, we skipped the entire learning curve path, and nobody seems to sort of have there's not even one sort of example of like, yep, we did that. I can see how it's, every new thing sort of has its own evolution, right? It doesn't necessarily evolve the same way the last trend did. And this one has its own evolution. It's got some patterns that you're like, okay, those are getting well established. I don't know that they scale past like small individuals and groups, but we'll see. But no, I appreciate you walking me through some stuff. And I do think it's going to be fascinating to see the companies that realize that like getting rid of their technical capable people, whether it's CLI capable or we should come up with some name that we can, kind of be the creators of, like getting rid of those people might be the worst thing you can do. Marrying them up with people that have domain expertise in your company might be the best thing you can do. And none of you seem to be sort of following that trend very much. So
amen. Well,
it's going to be interesting to watch. All right, man. Enough of that. I'm going to wrap it up, folks. Thanks for listening. Brandon, thanks as always for jumping on short term or long term. And we will talk to you next week.
Check us out online at reasoning.show for all things reasoning. And leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to the show.